So guys, MLB Cover the Bases time. Going to take a DFS and Sportsbook preview of tonight's MLB slate. So let's start with first base. Erik, why don't you hit us with your favorite pitcher on the slate tonight?
Well, there's an interesting one way down near the bottom, and that's Nick Lodolo. That's 6,100 versus the Padres. He had a very tough MLB debut against the Guardians. 5 runs on 7 hits and 4 innings pitched. And there's every chance he blows up your lineups today. But in a bigger contest, I think getting a guy this cheap to allow you to fit some top hitters into your lineup is definitely something worth considering. He's got a lot of talent, and one bad start doesn't take that away. In 13 starts in the upper minors last year, he struck out 38.8% of opposing batters while walking just 5.5%. Led to a 2.31 ERA and a whip under 1. And he is, that's all backed up by strong scouting reports from the prospect guys as well. So he's somebody we expect to be pretty good eventually. And that may start with his second start of his MLB career here in San Diego, which is a good pitcher's park against a lineup that ranks merely 19th by WRC plus this season. And that honestly feels right to me. The Padres, without Fernando Tatis, there's not a ton there. It's Manny Machado and a few other decent hitters, but it's not a lineup I'm scared about, especially in this park. So if you're looking for a cheap option in a bigger contest, consider Lodolo, even despite that pretty awful debut.
All right, Nick, Erik's strategy is he's paying down for a pitcher. So where are you going here?
I think that there's a couple of good value options today for sure. And another guy I want is a little bit more expensive, but right near that 8K range at 7.3K. Frankie Montas going up against the Orioles. I know Nestor Cortez is a lefty, but after what he did the other day, I don't know how anybody's not going to be looking at Frankie Montas tonight. He might be a little bit chalky, but still, I think you've got to eat that chalk tonight. There are some other good left-handed pitching matchups out there as well. I know Erik was highlighting one, but with the Orioles against right-handed pitching, 599 OPS. 0.084 ISO, 0.283 WOBA. I know it's early in the season, but still, you're facing a lot more right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching, so we're getting at least a decent sample size of what they can do. Also, 25.9% K rate. That's surprisingly, it's only 4th worst in baseball, but man, you can rack them up, and of course, Frankie Montas can do it just as well as anybody else.
All right, moving to second base. Erik, you mentioned if you go cheap with pitcher, you can pay up for some of these bats here. You got Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Starling Marte. You're paying all the way up for any of these guys?
I think I'd like to pay up for a few of those guys, which is why I also want another cheap option at first base in Rowdy Tellez. At 2,800, he's the 33rd most expensive first baseman on a slate that only has 18 teams. That just doesn't seem right to me. Last year, his results weren't that good, just 89 WRC plus, not nearly good enough for a first baseman. But if you look under the hood a bit, 20% strikeout rate, better than average by a few ticks, and an 11.6% barrel rate. That looks a lot like, say, Nick Castellanos. He actually was about a percentage point better than Castellanos in both of those. So his frequency and quality of contact are pretty good, and we're seeing that so far this year. He's got an 885 OPS. They'll get the platoon advantage against Zach Thompson, who is about as bland as it gets. He has a 3.30 ERA for his career, but the ERA estimators, many of them have him in the mid-4s, below average strikeout rate, and about average in terms of walks and ground balls. So I think a guy like Tellez is going to show why he's a lot better than his results were last year today against Thompson and the Pirates.
All right, Nick, favorite hitter on the slate?
I will say before I talk about Jared Walsh that Erik needs to take it easy going after Zach Thompson. He's writing DK Nation articles and he's pitching for the Pirates right now. Totally unfair. But more importantly, Jared Walsh, 4.3K. Again, talking about another first baseman. I'd love it even more if we still had outfield eligibility. Maybe that changes over the course of the season. But he is mashing right-handed pitching early on. Again, limited opportunities for everybody across the board, but still he's done well against right-handed pitching. And this is a guy, Luis Garcia, who's hit well throughout the course of his career. 16 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 7 for 11. In every regard, he's hitting well against this guy. So I think you'll get him against another righty right now. You got to go for it when he has good history against him. Robinson Cano, too. Double check, of course, if he's in lineup. Got the day off on Sunday. 3.6K if you're looking for a little savings, and a guy who I would assume is not going to be very popular. He has seen Alex Cobb quite a bit over the course of his career and done really well, too. I think that's just another guy that you could sneak in if you're looking for a value play in the middle infield.
All right, let's turn our attention to the DK Sportsbook. What is your favorite team on the money line, Nick?
So, look, I know we asked for money line, but I couldn't find one that I loved, like, in terms of payout and everything. Yes, I like the A's, but looking at payout, I don't want to go there necessarily. The Padres, similar kind of deal. So I'd rather tell you guys Padres run line would be the way to go. And I know that Erik was talking about Nick Lodolo earlier, but this is a Padres lineup that has done well against left-handed pitching early on. Again, I know limited sample size, but what else are we going to go off of? They're top 10 in terms of OPS and ISO against left-handed pitching early on. In Cincinnati, who I feel like has gotten more of a chance against left-handed pitching than everybody else when I was looking at plate appearances on the higher end, they have done nothing against left-handed pitching early on. Of course, Sean Manaea has been impressive. I know one of those starts was against the Diamondbacks, only means so much, but the Reds, they got a .098 ISO against left-handed pitching early on. So I'm not taking their offense seriously at all right now. And Sean Manaea has been in great form. So Padres, you can absolutely take them money line, but I also think you can take them run line today.
All right, Erik, what's your position here?
I'll go with another favorite here because I think there aren't a lot of compelling underdogs on today's slate. And that's the Phillies at -155 over the Rockies. This is basically a bet that Aaron Nola is fine. He's got a 6.75 ERA through 2 starts. But if you start digging into those ERA estimators, xERA, xFIP, they have them at about 3.5. Sierra has them all the way down at 271. The underlying numbers look fine. 30% strikeout rate, and his ground ball rate is up near 60%. He's only allowed 7 fly balls on the season, but 3 of them have cleared the fence. That's the kind of ratio that's going to regress to something more typical over the course of the season. Obviously, it's not something you love to see going into Coors Field, but I doubt he's going to have close to half his fly balls leave the yard here. And that Phillies loaded lineup with Schwarber and Castellanos added over the offseason, I think they're going to have a lot of fun at Coors Field against Chad Kuhl, who, like Zach Thompson, is pretty mediocre. I guess I'm not allowed to say bad things about Zach Thompson. So unlike Zach Thompson, he's pretty mediocre, career 4.42 ERA, and it looks quite earned. So I think the Phillies, assuming Nola is fine and doesn't keep having every mistake get punished, I think they should win this one pretty handily. Good
job, Erik. What about favorite run total?
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at the Braves Dodgers under 8. Sorry, and this here is a bet on a bounce back from Huascar Ynoa because the other side has Clayton Kershaw, which I think nobody should expect him to give up many runs after he apparently doesn't even give up base runners this season. Ynoa was knocked around for 5 runs in 3 innings against the lowly Nationals in his season debut. But he was pretty good last year, a 4.05 ERA that could have been even better according to many of the ERA estimators. Above average across the board, striking out about 27% of opposing batters, walking less than 7%, with an above average ground ball rate too. And that Braves bullpen is quite deep after adding Kenley Jansen, and they should be well rested after Spencer Strider handled all the relief work yesterday with 3.2 scoreless innings. So I think as a whole, Atlanta should be able to keep the Dodgers to maybe 4 or 5 runs here, which is probably all they need to do for this one, hit the under, given that Kershaw is on the mound for the other side.
All right, Nick, what's your favorite run total on the slate?
I'm going to go with a team total because I don't play by the rules. The Angels over 3.5. Wow. Okay. Against the Astros. I was kidding, but wow, now it's real. But the Angels have quite a few guys. I talked about Luis Garcia against Jared Walsh, but there are some other guys who do hit well against him. Shohei Ohtani being one of them. And all around, the Angels are dismantling right-handed pitching to start the season. .844 OPS, 234 ISO, 373 WOBA against right-handed pitching, all those numbers. And that leads Major League Baseball in each category against right-handed pitching. So I think them putting up at least 4 tonight is not a tall ask at all.